By the end of this video, you will know how to checkmate with a knight and a bishop against a king. Now, this is one of the more difficult endgames to learn. It's the most difficult of the checkmating endgames. So what do I mean by that? If you have a king and a queen against a king, that's pretty easy to win. If you have a king and a rook, that's pretty easy to win. Even a king and two bishops is pretty easy to win. The knight and the bishop is tricky, okay? And by the way, two knights, you can't force a checkmate. Anyway, so what's the deal here with this? The first thing you need to understand, when you checkmate with the knight and the bishop, you want to force your opponent's king into the same corner that matches the color of your bishop. That's the corner. So this one or this one, since I have a dark squared bishop, right? That's the corners, or those are the corners where you can checkmate. So if your opponent is smart, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the other corners, right? So there's a technique that we can learn once they run to those other corners, and if we follow that, we can get checkmate. And it's really not that bad once you know the technique. Now, when you're first starting out, you have to just try to force them to the edge of the board, okay, and kind of just see where they go, because not everybody knows to go to that corner. They might, to go to the opposite corner. They might help you and go to that corner. You just have to see what happens. So what I'm doing right now is playing on chess.com. I'm going to put a link in the description. You guys can practice this as well. After you finish the video, go click the link, practice it over there, okay? It's going to take you right to this practice page where you can play against the maximum level stockfish with the knight and the bishop, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is just move my king up. And this is the easiest thing to do. Get your king as close to your opponent's king as you can, and then try to use your knight or your bishop to kind of force the king towards the edge of the board, okay? So I'm going to move my bishop here because it creates this kind of barrier, right, where it forces the king backwards, okay? I'm going to kind of do the same sort of thing. Let's go here, slowly but surely creeping my king up, okay? And here I'm going to probably think about how to maybe use my knight. Let's just bring it over here. And this part right now, there's not an exact science to this. Just use your logic. Just do the best you can to try to keep forcing the king backwards, okay? So notice I had that same setup again. Let me try. Yeah, we'll try to go this way. Let's do, okay, so there's the king. And notice he's running to the opposite corner, right? Because he knows he can't get checkmated there. So we're going to have to force the king to one of these two corners, following the technique that I'm going to teach you guys in just a second. But for right now, I have to first get him into the corner. So let me go here, trying to use my king. Okay, he's running straight there. So let's bring the, let's see, I need to bring the knight in. And there's something you need to know about the knight. When they run to the opposite corner, you are trying to get your knight to control that square. And it's going to be defended by the king. All right, you're going to see this in just a second. So what I'm doing is eyeing these two squares, and I'm thinking, where can my knight move? So like this would be one way to get there, or like this, okay? And you're going to see why that's important in just a second. So let me just go over this one for now. Let me go here. Actually bring my king. I think I'm going to go ahead and get my king in the position. There we go. Bring my knight in. Notice I'm giving myself options to go to either of these, okay? And this is kind of what I'm going to call the key position, okay? So I want you to pay super close attention to this position. We have the dark squared bishop. We need to force the king to one of these two corners, but they went to the other corner because they're smart. We're playing stockfish, right? They went to the other corner. What do we need to do? We need to control that square with our knight, okay? So the knight is controlling the corner square. It's defended by the king, and then we have our bishop taking away this square. These are the three things that are important. And why is this important? Because it forces the king, since it can't go in the corner, and since it can't go up here, it forces the king to start moving in that direction. And essentially, the rest of this video is going to be continuing the process of forcing the king over to this corner, okay? So how could we do that? I mean, look at the position right now. Our king is very nicely positioned, right? And black's king has two options. They can either run towards the corner that we don't want them to go to, or they could run this way towards where we want them to go. So how do we force them to go there? Well, the answer is we bring the bishop down here, okay? So this is what you want to remember. We force them, since we took away this square, they have to go this way. Now, this is the very interesting moment in the position, because it looks like black's king is about to escape. They're going to go here, and they're just going to run away and go back to the beginner. We have to start all over again, right? But that's not true. That's not true. And what you need to remember is this knight is going to do a W. Okay, it's going to go boom, 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 boom. Now, I wish I had a Lee chess board where they do the straight arrows because it looks more like a W, but it's going to do this maneuver. okay? And this is what you have to remember. The knight just does this, okay? You say that, Nelson, that doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? The knight just does that. Watch. So you're going to go back here. And black has two options, okay? They can either go here or they can go this way. Now, if they go this way, I'm going to show you that. I don't think I can do an analysis board here while I'm in the middle of this. But if they go here, you're going to go anyway and force them to go back, okay? And then you would bring the king over and defend your knight. And it's kind of going to get to the same thing. But this one looks more dangerous for us because it looks like the king has just escaped. And they're going to head to the center of the board. We've just messed this up. What do? Well, we're going to keep doing our knight like this, except if we go there right now, he gets captured. So we're going to slide our king over so that we can defend, okay? And then we're going to jump in with the knight. So we're just doing exactly what I said. And even though it looks like the king is kind of escaping, I want you to pay close attention to my next move. Look at the knight controlling these squares. And watch what I'm going to do now. I'm going to bring my bishop back here, controlling these squares. Okay, so I have this controlled, I have this controlled, and my king is controlling this. Look at this. What do you notice? There's no way for that king to get out. I have essentially made a weird looking box sort of shape. Not really a box, but it's a wall that the king can't cross. Okay, that's what you have to remember. There's no way for the king to get out if you do this correctly. And now I just kind of need to waste a move to force the king to go back even further. So what I'm going to do is just go here. It's kind of a waiting move to force him to go back, okay? And again, I want to continue to force the king backwards. How do I do that? Well, I've got the knight here. I've got the king here. I need to control this square. So how do I do that? I'm going to actually do both of these. So I'm going to go here. And look what I did. I forced, because of all these squares being covered, I forced the king to go back. So the king does not escape if you follow this correctly, okay? And now I'm going to keep sliding my king over. So the thing about the knight doing this maneuver that you have to remember, you always slide the king over kind of with the knight to help defend it, okay, and help take away some of those squares. So now's the time, slide the king over, okay? Looks like black's trying to escape. I don't want to allow that, so I just have to do another waiting move. This is very common in endgames with bishops. You want to keep the bishop controlling that square. You also just kind of want to pass the turn back to black to force them to go over. So we simply do a waiting move. They have to move. And now we can come in and take away that square again. Same pattern that we saw before. Remember over here on the board, right? We brought the bishop in, forced the king to run this way. We're doing the exact same thing again. We take it away, force them to run here. And what do I do with my knight? You guys know this. That's right. I continue doing the W, right? I jump back here. And this time we see the king, instead of running that way, they run this way. So this is a good example of what do we do when they run that way? We continue, and notice how when we do that, we check them. We still have this controlled. We still have this controlled, and it forces them even further to the corner. Okay? Now, we don't want to lose the knight, so we slide the king over. And again, look at this. Because of the way these are positioned, forces the king over. Okay? Again, what do? Same thing. I'm going to go here. I'm keeping that king stuck to the back. I don't want to allow them to escape, so this one's very straightforward. We check with the bishop. Okay? And we've essentially, by maneuvering our knight, using the bishop and the knight to help, and the king, we've forced the king from this corner over to this corner. That's it. And once you do this, now you just kind of start looking for checkmates. So the bar over here is telling me it's mate in 4. But even if you didn't know that, you just kind of start looking for checkmates. And what I have found that works pretty well, just to kind of simplify, because sometimes it can get tricky, especially if you're a beginner or intermediate player, it can be tricky to find the checkmate. I'm going to give you kind of a foolproof way to do it, okay? So what I like to do, once I get them in the corner here, is I'll move my knight out of the way. And this is not the fastest way to do it. I'm just showing you it's a foolproof way so that you don't mess it up. I'm going to bring my bishop in. I'm going to position my bishop next to my king so that I have essentially trapped the king with only my king and my bishop. Okay, if you look carefully, the king is trapped with only my king and my bishop. My knight is free to do whatever it wants, and the king has to just go back and forth. Okay, if you do this every time, it just makes it easy, right? And now I'm going to think about where do I want my knight to deliver the checkmate. Okay, so if you imagine if my bishop is going to go for check, and the king is going to move, where would I want my knight to be? Well, it has to land here or here, something like that, to deliver the checkmate on this square, right? So I'm going to start positioning my knight. Let's just go for this one. How do I get my knight there? Boom, boom, boom. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go here. And once I have it set up, either I'm going to check with the knight and force the king in the corner and then deliver the checkmate with the bishop. Or in this case, I'm going to check with the bishop first and then bring in the knight. Just depends on where black's king happens to be as you're maneuvering your knight around. Okay. Remember, you don't want to stalemate. So you don't go here first. That would be a huge mistake because then the king can't move. You always go for the check. Whichever one is check, that's how you do it. Okay. Very straightforward. Check. Checkmate with the knight. That's it, guys. That's it. So let's recap. I have the move saved here. When you first start, you just do the best you can to force the king to the corner. If they're smart, they're going to go to the opposite corner eventually, okay? And you will get this key position. Now, important part here about the key position. In this particular example, excuse me, this was the corner that they ran to. We needed to force them this way. Sometimes it's the other way around, right? If this bishop would have been on a light square, they would have ran to this corner. And guess what? I would have needed to force them this way. And so in that case, where would I want my knight to be? Here. And my king here. And then I forced them, right? So what I'm saying is, and it doesn't have to be just at the top of the board going this way. It might be they're at the bottom of the board and you have to force them this way. Or maybe they're over here and you have to force them this way. You have to be able to kind of rotate it in your mind depending on which corner they're in, where your knight and bishop and king happen to be, right? So that's kind of important. That can be tricky for some players, especially if you're a beginner. So you do need to practice this a little bit because it's not always going to be in this corner going this way. When I first learned it, I think it was actually in this corner going this way, right? But you have to be able to switch it in your mind, okay? And then you just remember the W maneuver with your knight. That's super important. And then also just using the bishop to force the king. And if you have to do waiting moves, you do waiting moves, okay? So you force him over with the bishop. The knight does the jump. Use your king to support the knight. And it looks like they're about to escape. Even here, let me see if it lets me analyze here. No, it doesn't let me. Wow, that was not what I wanted to do. Sorry, let's go back here. Here, when black decided to move this way, they could have came up here, and it really looks like, oh, they're about to escape. But look carefully. The knight is controlling this and this. So imagine if black's king is here. Sorry, this is not the greatest way to explain this. But all I have to do, look at this, is control this square right here, right? So I just bring my bishop back. And again, we see that same situation where the king does not escape. Okay, so that's crucial. And then, like I said, once you finally continue this process enough, it eventually forces them all the way to the corner. And once you get here, like I said, the easiest thing, in my opinion, is to just position that bishop over here. Then you can take your time getting your knight exactly where it needs to be, and it's very straightforward. Okay, that's it, guys. Like I said, there's a link in the description. Click on it. It'll take you to chess.com where you can practice this. There's different starting positions, so you can, try it from different positions. Like here's another one. We'll just do this one real quick. See how fast I can do this one. Let's move our knight to safety. Let's bring our king up. Bring our king up. All right, let's keep bringing our king up. All right, looks like black is running over to that corner. Let me just bring my knight forward. Okay, let's go for this move. How about a check? How about bring my king up? Okay, so what do I have to do? I have to position my knight in the correct square. So let's go ahead and do that. Here we go. Let's take this away to force the king over. We'll come back here. Now we're going to start the little maneuver. So let's do it. Knight, king goes over. Knight jumps in. Looks like he's escaping, but nope, not. Again, keeping the king trapped, cutting off all of these squares. All right, very good. We need to do a waiting move. Let's do that. All right, take it away. Jump the knight back, same thing. Go for the check if that's what they do. If they ever go to the left, you always check with the knight to force them to go right. And then you bring the king over, you bring the king over. Don't let him escape. And let's go here. Let's see. There should be a faster checkmate. I'm trying to see if I can do it a little bit quicker here. Yes, so I can do it like this. I'm going to just do it a fast way here. Check and checkmate. Cool. But you could have also done the other technique that I showed you guys where you put the bishop and that's a little bit easier. All right, that's it. Go practice it. Let me know. What do you guys think? Did you do it? And I hope that's helpful. See you next time. Stay sharp. Play smart. Take care.